The phone rang at midnight, shattering the fragile peace I had fought so hard to rebuild. For a moment, I just stared at the glowing screen, my breath shallow. After 38 years of marriage, late-night calls had only ever meant one thing: bad news. My mind raced through possibilities. A family emergency, a hospital update, maybe even a call meant for someone else. But deep down, I knew this call was meant for me. I answered, my voice rough from sleep. "Hello." There was silence on the other end, but I could hear the faint hum of static, like someone breathing but too afraid to speak. Then a click and the line went dead. I stayed still, gripping the phone as if holding it tighter could force the caller back. Memories surged like a tidal wave. The sterile beeping of hospital machines, whispered conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, and the cold realization that after surviving a near-fatal heart attack, I had woken up to a world where I didn't seem to exist anymore. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. But alive felt like a cruel joke when my wife, Linda, stood at the foot of my hospital bed with eyes glazed in something colder than indifference. Relief hadn't been in her expression, only disappointment, as though my survival had ruined her carefully laid plans. I rose from bed and wandered to the window, staring out at the quiet street. After being discharged, coming home had felt hollow. Linda barely spoke to me, retreating into late-night volunteer work and emergency shifts at the hospital where she worked as an administrator. Our shared home was now a battlefield of unspoken words and suffocating silences. But I hadn't missed the slip-ups. The expensive perfume lingering on her clothes, the secretive glances at her phone, and the way she always seemed elsewhere. I chalked it up to stress, until that night at the hospital when I'd heard her voice in the next room, soft and intimate, whispering to someone she shouldn't have been calling darling. Still clutching the phone, I paced the darkened living room, my mind tangled with suspicions I couldn't prove. The midnight call had unlocked something. Fear, curiosity, or maybe just desperation to understand the truth. I was still trapped in those thoughts when headlights flashed outside. A car door slammed, followed by hurried footsteps. The front door creaked open, and Linda's silhouette appeared, framed by the dim porch light. Her gaze met mine, momentarily startled. "You're awake," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "Couldn't sleep?" I replied, matching her casual tone despite the pounding in my chest. "Late night at the hospital?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. "Emergency meeting. You know how it is." I nodded slowly, though I knew better. Tonight I'd find out where she had really been, and with whom. I watched Linda move through the doorway like a specter, her steps deliberate but light, as if she were accustomed to entering a house where she no longer belonged. She didn't meet my gaze again, retreating into the kitchen with the air of someone slipping back into a familiar disguise. Something about tonight felt different, charged, electric, like the moment before a lightning strike. I followed her into the kitchen, leaning against the doorway as she fumbled with the kettle, pretending to busy herself. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly. "Long meeting?" I asked casually, though my pulse thudded like a war drum. Her head snapped up. "Yeah," she said too quickly, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Staffing issues, budget cuts. You know how hospitals are." I nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving hers. She hated when I watched her too closely. It made lying harder. Before I could press further, a familiar chime echoed from her purse. The same ringtone I'd heard countless times but never paid attention to until now. Her face paled as she snatched the phone with practiced urgency. "It's work," she mumbled, already turning her back. "I need to take this." The lie was so smooth, so instinctive, that for a second, I almost admired its perfection. But not tonight. I slipped silently into the hallway, creeping closer until I could just make out her hushed voice through the cracked door. "I told you not to call me this late," she hissed, her tone sharp and urgent. "Yes, he's home." "No, he suspects nothing." The air turned ice-cold around me, freezing me in place. There was a pause, followed by a low, familiar murmur on the other end. A voice I couldn't place but that prickled the edges of memory like a half-forgotten nightmare. "Calm down," Linda continued. We're fine as long as you keep your mouth shut. He doesn't know what we did. What we did. The words twisted in my chest like a knife, stealing my breath. My thoughts splintered. What could she mean? Was this about the affair? Or something much worse? I pressed closer, desperate for more, when her footsteps suddenly approached the door. I barely had time to slip back into the living room, heart pounding like a trapped animal. Linda appeared seconds later, composed but with that same tight-lipped smile that now felt more like a sneer. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Just work," she replied smoothly. "Nothing to worry about." But there was something to worry about. I could feel it now, a storm gathering just beneath the surface of her calm facade. As she disappeared upstairs, I stood rooted to the floor, consumed by a terrible certainty. Whatever she was hiding, I wasn't meant to survive it. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind felt like a deliberate noise meant to drown out the secrets crawling beneath my skin. Linda's words echoed in my head on an endless loop. He doesn't know what we did. By dawn, the shadows in the room seemed sharper, more menacing, as though they were watching me, waiting for me to figure out the terrible truth before it consumed me. I couldn't stay passive any longer. After Linda left for her morning shift at the hospital, her smile fixed but her eyes hollow, I went into the study. My fingers hovered over her laptop, a part of me still hesitant. We had shared a life, a marriage, but trust felt like a relic from another lifetime. The login screen blinked expectantly. I tried her usual password, our anniversary. Access denied. Of course. I cycled through a list of predictable combinations. Her mother's birthday, our wedding venue, even her favorite author. Nothing worked. My frustration mounted, burning hotter with each failed attempt. Then, I remembered something. A seemingly insignificant detail from a Christmas card she'd mailed to an old friend last year. She had written a personalized note and signed off using an inside joke from her college days. Asterisk, forever chasing sunsets. Asterisk. I typed it in. The screen blinked once and then, access granted. My heart pounded as I combed through her emails, searching for anything. An affair, a hidden account, anything that could explain the mounting dread in my chest. Most messages were innocuous, professional or personal updates with friends, until I hit a folder titled Archive, buried deep in her inbox. Inside was a string of emails from a private address. shadowkeys99@securemail.com. The subject lines sent a chill down my spine. Status update. Final phase confirmed. Progress report. Patient condition critical. Full asset transfer. Awaiting confirmation. Patient condition. Asset transfer. The words felt clinical, sinister, calculated. My fingers trembled as I opened the most recent email, dated just 2 nights ago. The message was brief, almost coded. Asterisk phase 2 initiated. Proceed as discussed. Ensure zero liabilities. Discretion is paramount. Asterisk. There was no signature, no identifying details, just those cold, mechanical words. My breath came in sharp gasps as I reread the message, searching for meaning in its stark simplicity. What had Linda done? Suddenly, a faint buzz from her phone on the kitchen counter snapped me out of my trance. She must have left it behind in her rush this morning. I darted to the phone, heart hammering. A single text illuminated the screen from the same unknown number. It's done. He'll never know. A flash of nausea hit me like a wave. He'll never know. I staggered back, phone still in my grip, mind racing with horrific possibilities. Whatever it was already in motion, and it had everything to do with me. The room felt suffocating, the walls pressing in with a silent, invisible force. I stared at Linda's phone, the text still glowing on the screen like a death sentence. Asterisk, it's done. He'll never know. Asterisk. My hands were clammy, my heartbeat erratic, each pulse a deafening thud in my chest. Whatever Linda had done, I was certain now it wasn't just an affair. This was bigger, darker, and somehow, I was the liability. I couldn't stay here. Snatching the phone, I grabbed my keys and rushed out the front door. The cold morning air hit my face like a slap, sharp and grounding. My car roared to life, its engine vibrating beneath me, a steady reminder that I was still tethered to this fragile reality. I had no plan, only instinct. There was one person who might help, even if I hadn't seen him in years. Ethan Reyes, my closest friend from my old job at the insurance firm, now a private investigator. We hadn't spoken since he left after some messy legal fallout, but if anyone could make sense of this, it was him. As I drove, my mind reeled with fragmented memories. Small things I had ignored over the past year. Linda's increasing emergency calls. The unspoken tension between us that had thickened like tar. The vague references to high-value patients she worked with at the hospital. How had I missed the signs? The sound of a lock clicking echoed down the quiet hallway as Ethan opened the door to his cramped office. He looked rough, disheveled hair, unshaven, his sharp features weathered by years of chasing shadows. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, though his expression stayed guarded. "Michael," he said slowly, "didn't expect to see you ever again." "No time for pleasantries," I said, stepping inside and locking the door behind me. "I need your help." He studied me with practiced caution but nodded toward the worn-out leather chair across from his cluttered desk. "Talk." I told him everything, the strange phone calls, the encrypted emails, the chilling text message. With each word, Ethan's frown deepened, his sharp mind visibly piecing together possibilities far more terrifying than I dared to imagine. "You said the emails mentioned patient condition and asset transfer?" he asked, scribbling notes with mechanical precision. I nodded. "What does that sound like to you?" "Could be a dozen things," he muttered, then paused. "But hospitals, high-value targets, it could mean organ trafficking, or worse." The words felt like ice in my veins. Before I could respond, Linda's phone buzzed again, startling us both. Another message from the unknown number. Location confirmed. Proceeding as planned. My stomach twisted violently. Ethan's eyes locked on mine, his voice grim. "Whoever sent that, they know where she is or where you are." Suddenly, a noise echoed from outside the office. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, closing in fast. Ethan shot to his feet, his hand reaching instinctively toward the drawer where I knew he kept a revolver. The front door handle rattled violently. We weren't safe. Not anymore. And whatever Linda had set in motion, it was coming for me now. The front door burst open with a violent crash, sending splinters of wood scattering across the floor. Ethan shoved me toward the back of the office, his revolver already raised. "Stay low," he barked. I stumbled into the cramped storage room, heart hammering like a war drum. Footsteps thundered in the outer office, at least 2, maybe 3 men, moving with precision. Ethan's voice rang out like a shot. "You've got the wrong place. Leave now, and we won't have any problems." Silence. Then, bang. A gunshot shattered the air. I froze. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I strained to hear through the ringing in my ears. The room spun, every instinct screaming at me to run. But where? Suddenly, Ethan staggered into the doorway, blood soaking his left shoulder. His face was twisted in pain, but his grip on the revolver was still steady. "They're not here to negotiate," he hissed through clenched teeth. Before I could react, 2 shadowy figures emerged from the hallway, clad in dark tactical gear. One of them raised a gun, but Ethan was faster. Bang. Bang. The first assailant dropped like a stone. The second ducked behind a filing cabinet, returning fire. Papers erupted into the air like a snowstorm, obscuring everything. "Go. Now." Ethan snarled, shoving me toward the back exit. "Find out what they want. End this or it won't stop." His words hit harder than the gunshots. With one last, desperate glance, I bolted through the back door into the narrow alley behind the office. Cold air slapped my face, and I forced my legs to move, adrenaline turning every step into a blur. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, lungs burning, mind spiraling. Ethan's blood-streaked face haunted me, his last command echoing in my head. Asterisk, find out what they want. End this. Asterisk. But where could I go? Then it hit me, the hospital. The only place where all of this began. And where it might still be unfolding. I reached the hospital just past midnight, blending into the stream of exhausted nurses and visiting families. My eyes locked on the administration wing where Linda's office was located, dark, deserted, its glass doors sealed shut. But just as I turned away, a flicker of movement caught my attention. A shadow slipping through a side corridor. My pulse surged. Staying low, I followed the figure through the maze-like back halls, heart pounding with every silent step. They disappeared into an unmarked maintenance room at the far end. I crept closer, flattening myself against the wall, straining to hear. Is it done? A familiar voice hissed from inside. Linda. My stomach twisted. Her voice was cold, calculated, nothing like the woman I thought I'd married. A deeper voice answered. We eliminated the investigator. He didn't talk. A sickening wave of dread crashed over me. Ethan gone. Because of me. What about Michael? Linda pressed, her tone sharp with urgency. Tracking him now, the man said darkly. He won't make it far. I felt my world collapse, rage swallowing the grief before it could consume me. They thought they'd won. They thought I was still running. But not anymore. I kicked the door open with all the force I could muster, sending it crashing against the wall. Linda spun around, her face draining of color. Michael! Surprised. I growled, fists clenched. You should be. For the first time she looked afraid. For a moment time froze. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the stark reality between us. Husband and wife, predator and prey. Linda's breath hitched, her calculating mind already spinning a dozen escape plans. But not this time. The man beside her lunged for something at his waist. Probably a weapon. I moved faster, adrenaline and sheer rage driving me forward. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him crashing into a metal cart, scattering surgical instruments across the floor with a deafening clang. Linda stumbled back, trapped between me and the emergency exit. Her face twisted into something unrecognizable. Part fury, part desperation. You were supposed to be dead, she spat, venom dripping from every word. Sorry to disappoint, I hissed, closing the distance between us. But you were always better at lies than follow-through. Her eyes flicked toward the fallen man groaning on the floor. Desperation morphed into cold calculation once more. You have no idea what you've done, she seethed. It was never just about us. This goes far deeper than you could ever imagine. I didn't flinch. I'm not interested in your twisted game, Linda. It ends now. Before she could respond, distant shouts echoed down the hall. Security guards, maybe police. Backup. Finally, Linda's mask cracked, panic flashing in her eyes. For the first time, she seemed vulnerable, human. She let out a hollow laugh, bitter and broken. You think this ends with me? You think you're safe now? I stepped closer, dropping my voice to a dangerous whisper. I'm not running anymore. Her expression hardened, but the fight drained from her posture. She knew the game was over, or at least this part of it. The door burst open, and armed officers stormed the room, shouting commands. I raised my hands slowly, stepping back as they surrounded us. Linda didn't resist as they forced her to the ground. Her wrists snapped into cold metal cuffs. As they hauled her away, she turned one last time, her voice low but razor-sharp. This isn't over, Michael. The hospital's sterile corridors blurred into the background as I sat in the waiting room, numb and hollow. It was done, or at least she was. The past 38 years unraveled like a shattered illusion, leaving only jagged pieces behind. Ethan's death weighed heavy on my soul. I gotten justice, but not peace. A soft knock broke through the fog of my thoughts. Detective Carla Monroe, the lead investigator, stood in the doorway, her expression grim but respectful. We've secured the hospital records and traced the encrypted emails. You were right. Linda was funneling organ trafficking profits through dummy charities, she said quietly. It's massive. I nodded slowly, the enormity of it crushing me anew. And the others? We're still tracing leads, she admitted. But you're safe. For now. Safe. The word felt foreign. Hollow. As she left, I walked outside into the cold dawn, the first light stretching across the horizon like fragile hope. The air was sharp, clean, free of the suffocating weight I'd carried for so long. I reached into my coat pocket, fingers brushing against something hard, Linda's phone. The last piece of her tangled web, still holding secrets she never wanted me to know. For a fleeting moment, I considered throwing it into the bay, letting the tide swallow its dark truths forever. But instead, I slid it back into my pocket. This wasn't over, not yet. And for the first time, I was ready. Betrayal runs deeper than you think. Like the video and share your theories in the comments.